Okay, recording is in progress and we are live streaming. Thanks everyone for joining our quarterly community call. We try and do these once a month and we rotate through different topics. 1 month we do a general project update. 1 month we do topic specific call based on something going on in the Livepeer ecosystem. And then 1 month we do a call specifically focused on topics relevant to node operators, orchestrators that are running the Livepeer network. And that's what we've got going on this month. Hopefully most of you know me. I'm Doug Pekanis, one of the founders of the project. Excited to have Tom, who leads a lot of the engineering on the network and video software within Livepeer. I think Hunter's joining, who heads up product for some updates. And then we should have plenty of time for Q&A, open discussion. Feel free to drop questions in the chat as we go, or unmute and chime in. For those of you who are not aware, maybe you're watching the stream or watching the recording of this after the fact, there's a great orchestrator community within Livepeer in the Discord, and every single week on Monday at about 3 p.m. Eastern time, I think that's 9 p.m. Central European time, they hold a water cooler chat, which is just an open, community-driven, informal discussion around a lot of topics relevant to node operators. Anyone can bring any questions or topics they want to talk about. So I highly recommend that people who are interested in node operation pay attention to that and join that on Monday afternoons. This is a little bit more of an update and a chance for some of the core developers to communicate the roadmap and what's going on. So slightly different content, but both are really useful for the orchestrator community. Cool. So what do we got on the schedule today? I think we're gonna cover. I'll do a quick presentation on sort of our usage growth around the VOD product and what's going on there, and some user highlights for people to be aware of. I know the node operators are always interested in where demand is coming from and where it may be coming from in the future. Share some of the latest staking and orchestrator statistics, and I'll get out of the way and hand it over to Tom, who can give an update on the sort of the reliability work, the infrastructure work that's leveraging the Livepeer network more and more for more capabilities that Studio is offering. Share a little bit about the roadmap, talk about observability into orchestrators and the selection process, which I know has been a topic of discussion. And then Hunter can chime in with kind of quick insights on product roadmap prioritization and feature requests and the new public feature request dashboard as well. And then, like I said, plenty of time for any questions, Q&A at the end. I am having a little bit of a weird screen setup difficulty where I'm not sure I'm seeing the chat. So again, feel free to interrupt me or chime in if there's questions and I don't see something in the chat. Okay, one product highlight that's sort of been key to a lot of the usage on the Livepeer network recently, and we hope will be really key to it going forward, is that Livepeer Studio shipped a video on demand API. For the longest time, Livepeer has primarily supported live streaming, and it's focused on the main kind of entry point for getting video through Livepeer, streaming video over RTMP live streams. And then those streams would be instantly viewable, playable, recordable as well. But obviously a big feature that app builders have wanted is video on demand, or essentially the ability for users to upload videos and then have them available for playback within their applications. And Livepeer shipped this capability, and it comes with support for minting these video uploads as NFTs, storing them on decentralized storage, optimizing playback performance so that these videos can be played back immediately off decentralized storage, which is not always the case without Livepeer. There's features to optimize these for mobile, so optimizing the formats of these videos for sort of short form, TikTok style swipeable video with instant playback, and making it really easy to integrate these videos into your mobile apps via SDKs. And then looking forward a little bit, there's all sorts of interesting experimentation around access control to these video assets and gating access based on what is in the digital wallets that connect, whether that's only viewable within certain communities of NFT holders or other certain on-chain criteria. So a little bit different from your DRM in your traditional world. So this product's been in focus, and I want to share a little bit about the adoption to give people some insight into what's going on here. So the adoption has been good. I'm always, I recognize that this chart that shows video on demand usage within Livepeer, I recognize it has no y-axis that shows the labels or the numbers. The reason I'm always a little careful about that is because the users of this are using Studio. Oftentimes they are businesses. They haven't opted into Livepeer sharing their usage or their statistics. And while it's still maybe a little bit more limited number of applications that are using it, I don't want to reveal anything that the apps themselves wouldn't be comfortable revealing. So we'll have to take the kind of scale of these this increased usage as a positive signal. But what you see, it's been consistently growing a little bit month over month since the alpha, the beta, the testing, the launch around kind of right at the beginning of I think the end of November, early December. And you see February was the kind of highest usage month. And March, we're only 2/3 of the way through March, but we're on track to kind of be right around or above February. So this is a really good signal. Similarly, this is counting the developer count. So sort of the number of users across different categories that we look at within Livepeer Studio, the main product that developers are using to access VOD. And we see this growing tremendously as well. The green is sort of just the registered users who have tried this feature. And then the pink and the yellow is the count of the apps that are sort of growth or high growth applications based on their minutes of usage or their number of video uploads over the course of a month. And another positive signal, you sort of see this growing across all categories, including in March, where again, we're only 2/3 of the way through the month, but you're already seeing more developers leveraging this feature. And as we know, it takes a couple months from developers to begin leveraging this for these things to be integrated into applications, rolled out, and seeing usage. So good signals here. A couple of user highlights. We've talked about the Lens protocol ecosystem quite a bit. This is a social media protocol that's deployed on the Polygon network. Has primitives for social media like accounts, follows, posts, collects, so that users can collect media across social media. And then there's a thriving ecosystem of applications built on top that look a little bit like, some apps look like Twitter, some apps look like YouTube, some apps look like Twitch, some apps look like new creative types of social experiences you haven't seen before. We've talked about one that's been sort of a core user of Livepeer for a while. The one on the left is LensTube. That's sort of the YouTube type experience. And the increasingly a little bit more like the TikTok type experience with shorts in the Lens ecosystem. And that usage has continued to be strong. Lenstube's been a great design partner, really tested our VOD features first before anyone else, helped discover a bunch of bugs, and we've really tuned and refined the product to make it better for them. The app on the right is really exciting. If you're not familiar with it, it's called Orb. It's, I think, the fastest growing, highest engagement app in the Lens ecosystem. It's mobile first, sort of a Twitter style experience, very nice user experience, polished application. And they were the first mobile client to implement Livepeer's video on demand capability and all video. They actually have video posts on mobile. One of the first apps we've seen use Livepeer that leverages that. And anyone with a Lens account can upload video posts to Orb. It'll be processed by Livepeer. It'll be playback immediately, playable immediately in stream. And I know they've had a lot of success with that feature. So definitely been exciting to see the growth of the Lens protocol ecosystem and support some of the top apps there. Next user highlight. Excited to highlight something that Xenon just launched a couple days ago. Xenon's been a really exciting application that's been building directly on the Livepeer network, but also is an active participant in our orchestrator community. And what's really interesting is that they've they've kind of melded their supply-side orchestrator-centric operations with their demand-side user application and creator monetization in an exciting new experiment in which the ETH proceeds that are earned by their orchestrator for transcoding video, whether that's video through Xenon or video from other sources on the Livepeer network, their node earns ETH, and they're actually putting that ETH into a pool that is being used and shared amongst the streamers that use the Xenon application. And so they're actually sort of using the proceeds of decentralized infrastructure operations in order to incentivize and fund creators in their application. I think it's a great, exciting experiment. We'll see where it goes. I think ultimately, their aim, or what I think many apps aim to aspire to, is to create this sort of sustainable model where creators can earn for the content that they create. The platform earns, money in one way or another through interaction with the creators, through infrastructure participation, and then those funds are used to actually pay for access to these sort of unstoppable, decentralized, permissionless infrastructures. And if you achieve that, you actually have this loop where the app can be community owned, it can live forever, it can cover its own cost, it can create a sustainable model for creators, for the app builders, for the infrastructure participators. And I think that's really powerful. And I think that's a little different than the sort of advertising or attention economy models that you see in traditional platforms. So Xenon's awesome, check it out, stream on it. We should try streaming these calls through Xenon next time as well. And excited to highlight that. Cool. One of the last things I wanted to highlight was I started populating a list called Awesome Livepeer in conjunction with many, or kind of inspired by many different projects that have their own awesome project page. And it's a GitHub repo. You can find it at this URL. It's community maintained and anyone can submit a pull request or an edit to add elements into Awesome Livepeer. It features many of the applications that are built on Livepeer, so you can see a whole list and click through. We should add descriptions. There's also sections that feature all the great orchestrator tools and network tools on there as well. I know there's also sections that feature tutorials and demos and really helpful resources. And so please, 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 if there's a Livepeer resource that's been really helpful to you as a node operator or orchestrator, let me know, or just submit it as a pull request into the Awesome Livepeer repo. This is a sort of a low stakes, easy way to aggregate all the great resources we can point people to as they're getting started with node operation on the network or want to check out apps that are built on Livepeer. Cool. Some quick updates on staking and the Livepeer network. I think I had a slide before this. Yep. So economics as they relate to node operations on the network. The Livepeer participation rate fell below 50% about a month ago or so, when there was a large sort of token unbonding with like an institutional level token unbonding that pushed us from 51% down to 44% or something. We've been below the 50% mark ever since, though it's been trickling back up in the recent weeks due to inflation. For those of you who aren't aware, that's a couple impacts for orchestrators due to that. One is that you see, if you look at the inflation rate chart on the right, you see that sort of every day the inflation rate has ticked up a little bit, which means sort of more Livepeer tokens will be minted in the next round than in the previous round. So those who are running nodes, those who are staking, should have access to more Livepeer tokens each day as a result of that. The second impact there is that these new tokens, I think in the last round there's about 6,200 Livepeer tokens minted. A month ago, those tokens would have been split up amongst 50% of the stake on the network. Today, those tokens are split up only amongst 44% of the stake on the network, which means every token that you've staked, every token that's staked towards your node is earning a bigger share of that that newly minted token. And so node operators probably saw the rewards went up and continue to go up as a result of being below the 50% mark. Typically, when we've dipped below 50%, inflation ticks back up, but you see some tokens potentially change hand in the secondary market and be transferred back in to be restaked. So wouldn't be surprised if we surpass 50% again sometime soon and the rate begins ticking back down, but wanted to give that sort of economic update to everyone. The kind of second thing worth highlighting is that kind of an interesting, I don't know, mini milestone, or I don't know if it's a milestone, but the minimum stake to become an orchestrator in the top 100 has increased pretty significantly recently as a result of those last few slots getting more competitive and earning more stake. It might have something to do with the fact that the Explorer showcases sort of the yield generation opportunities on the low stake nodes front and center, and that may be attracting more stake to some of the lower stake nodes, or just kind of more people are becoming aware of the opportunity to run a node on Livepeer, aggregating their own stake and entering. But we're currently above 600 LPT of stake required to break into the top 100. And I think that recently it may have been as low as 1 to 200 LPT to break in. And obviously over the last couple of years, we've seen it be just a few LPT or 10 LPT or 15 LPT to break in. So I think it's worth noting it's become a little bit less generally accessible to become an orchestrator at the moment. I certainly don't think the network's been seeing demand that would necessitate us expanding the orchestrator set size just in order to onboard more supply to the network. But I do think the community should think about, general accessibility of new orchestrators getting started, trying this out, maybe being able to earn some ETH fees, and how much of a barrier there should be in order for a node operator to begin that experimentation, because it's just a governance parameter, and we can always consider, expanding the working set size via a governance update if we want to expand beyond 100 nodes to lower this threshold for a little bit. So I don't have a strong opinion on that in the moment, but I think it's a good topic for water cooler chats, for community governance channel on Discord as well. Great. So I'll save some of this discussion and Q&A for later. That's all I wanted to share kind of on the network updates. I'll stop my presentation now and hand it over to Tom, who can give some sort of more infrastructure-centric updates. And Tom, I might have to give you screen sharing capabilities here.
Sure, let me try. I think I'm going to have to leave and rejoin 1 second.
I just made you the host, Tom, so you might have it now. Do you see it now?
Let me try. Oh, there we go. Yeah, should work. Okay. Yep. Okay, nice. Let me load this up. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about some of the stuff we've been doing with VOD, what's gone well, and what our plans are for April as well. So what's gone well? We shipped. We've been focusing a lot on monitoring, measuring, iterating, just basically trying to get towards 100% VOD ingest success for valid files, which I think is something we haven't done an amazing job of before. So yeah, really focusing on being able to just dive deep into a specific request and why it failed, and also just monitoring the bigger picture of like VOD system health. As Doug said, we've seen a nice, pretty steady ramp up in traffic over the past few months. We've shipped the ability to handle larger files, so reliably being able to ingest, like, I think probably 10 to 20 gigabyte files at the moment. We've handled multiple unplanned mass ingests. So as some of these apps have come online and begun using Livepeer, they've just imported their entire back catalog, usually without telling us. And yeah, the system's scaled well. We haven't had any problems with running out of transcode capacity, or falling over or failing to transcode. We've just, over the course of a couple of days, managed to process their entire catalog. Transcoding success rate and speed. So transcoding for VOD has been looking really good. It's been working well, working quickly. I mentioned this in the last water cooler, but at the moment for a given VOD job, we will have a parallelism factor of 2. So we're transcoding 2 segments at any one time in parallel. That's been working really nicely. So I think one of the things we're going to be looking at in the future is bumping that up and measuring and just seeing like how much we can get away with increasing that. Because I think that would be a really nice feature win against some of the other transcoding providers, is being able to just blast it out across the network, send all these segments out in parallel, and then compile the results together at the end. We've been doing a lot of work on destorage support. So both on the ingest side and the output side, being able to use web3.storage, IPFS, Store.j. We're looking at a few others in the future as well, but yeah, we shipped that, and we've already seen a couple of these social network customers beginning to use those. Adaptive MP4 generation. So Doug touched on this, but this is in the pipeline, figuring out whether we want to, alongside the multi-rendition HLS outputs, whether we want to generate an MP4 as well. At the moment, that's just based on video length. So I think if it's under 2 minutes at the moment, we'll generate an MP4 alongside it. And that's basically because we're seeing so many of these short form, like TikTok-esque video experiences coming online. It's when the video is that short, there are less benefits to be had from letting people switch between renditions and using HLS. And so by pushing out an MP4, it lets those kind of experiences get the experience they want, which is like mainly around fast playback startup times, right? They want to keep people's attention, let people quickly scroll between videos. And so fast startup time becomes a lot more important than being able to adaptively switch to the perfect quality for your bandwidth, like you would want with a more long form, like say Netflix type experience. We shipped the transcoding API recently in addition. So we have the standard, like if you go into Studio, upload a VOD asset, that type of experience, there's an API alongside that as well. The idea with the transcoding API is it cuts out some of that Studio management of assets and lets customers that are bringing their own asset management system, say, just use like almost a more raw form of the Livepeer network to just handle the transcoding for them, spit out a result, and then everything beyond that is something they manage. Oh, and yeah, the other thing, like the final thing, which was a big part of getting towards reliability, is rejecting invalid files before trying to transcode. So filtering out like people that are uploading JPEGs or people that are uploading URLs on like paths on their local machine rather than a URL. Things like that, we've seen a surprisingly varied and large amount of. And so filtering those out before we start trying to send these invalid things into the network, which has been pretty important in the first point I made of being able to monitor and measure what's going on. It's like by filtering out this invalid stuff early, we're getting more of a true measure of how successful the network transcoding is going. So yeah, this is a like visual depiction of that. This is our ingestion success rate over time, and you can see obviously started really spiky. And over time, other than this little dip, it's kind of trended towards this really nice flat line, almost a flat line up at 100%. I think by the end of April, that should be looking really flat. We are really reaching some like edge corner cases of weird types of media being uploaded and stuff, but I think we'll be able to push that really close by the end of April. This is an interesting one as well. So this is just a depiction of source codecs. Again, like along the lines of tracking and measuring and figuring out what's going on in the network. I pulled some data on what people are uploading. So the big blue block is H.264 AAC, which I kind of expected. We expected that to be the dominant thing people are uploading. The red one is also H.264 AAC, just with like a slightly different codec format string. And so I was actually surprised. I knew it would be the dominant one, but we're seeing, I think 99% of the assets being ingested are that, which are great for the network. It's like any card people are using, like any hardware we're running can easily handle that, right? I think the orange blocks, the only other thing that's even really showing up here, there's a few little bits of orange, and that's HEVC. So that's been pretty nice. That's given us a lot of confidence that we're going to be able to handle like the kind of things people actually in the real world want to throw at us. There's very little in terms of unusual codecs or things that are going to be difficult for us to handle on, say, NVIDIA card.
Tom, what did you say the red one was again?
Oh, so the red one is also essentially the same as the blue. It's H.264 AAC, but the codec string just comes in a slightly different format sometimes.
Got it.
Okay, so yeah, some stats around that. This also matches up with what we've been seeing in terms of these customers that are coming online. It's been very much tailored towards short form. So we're seeing like an average video duration of 11 seconds, an average input size of 52 megabytes. And so, yeah, that's in terms of product direction. I think that's probably going to be where we're focusing on, at least in the near term, is these optimizing these short form experiences, being able to ship a transcode out really quickly, being able to start playback really quickly. Yeah. Okay, so in terms of what's coming, particularly in April, we're going to carry on, like I said, pushing for 100% success, iterating on edge cases. I think we're close to being able to handle slightly larger files as well as for longer form use cases. So we're aiming to support up to 40 gigabytes until we see a use case that wants to go beyond that. I think that'll be a really nice capability to offer though. And obviously, yeah, that's a lot of transcoding work if we do see people starting to ingest those kinds of files. And again, like if we do see that, then that's going to be another case where being able to parallelize transcode across multiple orchestrators is going to be really helpful. Recording is also something we're focusing on in April. So I'd say recording is probably the least reliable bit of our pipeline now. Now we've improved VOD, we've been stabilizing live. Recording is the one bit that we're not really happy with in terms of reliability. So what this diagram is showing is the orange arrows are our live pipeline. So video gets streamed in, hits Mist sends it off to the network to transcode, it comes back, and people play back via Mist. We've added this orange arrow here, going up to temporary storage. So that is, as the input video comes into Mist, it's now segmenting it, and as well as sending it off to the transcoder, it just pushes it out to this temporary storage. What that means is we can begin treating it essentially like a VOD asset. So once it's in there, we can just kick off essentially a VOD request within the Catalyst API that pulls in from there, transcodes it into multiple renditions, pushes it out to the VOD storage. But that basically consolidates our pipeline. So there's going to be no real distinction between like a recorded live stream and a VOD asset anymore. And so as we start shipping other features like clipping and things like that, it means like we implement them once, they apply to both VOD and live. And hopefully it just becomes a lot more reliable as well. There's a lot less going on real time during the live transcoding process. All we have to do is get the files, those source files into storage, and then we have like the robustness of the VOD pipeline, all the retry logic we built into that, handling actually transcoding it and creating a VOD asset from it. Okay, so yeah, I guess this is going to be the most interesting bit for people on this call, is focusing on network observability. So what I want to try and produce is some sort of artifact coming out of the broadcasters. There's almost like an audit log of what's going on. And so that's to remove some of the mystery for you guys, and in terms of like why certain orchestrators are getting selected, why other ones aren't, and also for us as well. So as we're beginning to debug the problems you're reporting, it just is going to give us a lot more insight into why certain things are happening. So yeah, my idea at the moment is that it'll be kind of an audit log format of a segment comes in, which orchestrators are in contention for transcoding it, why we pick a given one, whether that transcode succeeds or fails, how long it takes, and trying to make it so that you could dive in either at a like particular live stream level or a particular orchestrator level, or like right down to a single segment level. And yeah, like I said, that lets us start addressing some of these long-standing bugs that are just, with the data we have at the moment, quite difficult to figure out what's going on. Like why, when an orchestrator address changes, why does it take some indefinite amount of time for that to get picked up? Why do some orchestrators see spikes in streams every X minutes? All these types of things. My thinking at the moment is that it's going to be fairly short-lived data. This isn't like a metric type thing where we want to build up a picture over a long period of time. It's going to be really for these cases of investigating some specific thing. So I think it's going to be short-lived, like we'll produce 24 hours of data that you can query. And yeah, we're putting together thoughts on like what the format would look like, what's going to be included, how that would be accessed externally. So yeah, as soon as I have a proposal, I'd like to try and work in the open on this one, bring in the orchestrators. So once we have a proposal, I'll send that out on Discord and hopefully start getting feedback. And yeah, like another good example of why we need this is fast verification. We want to try and roll verification out again, but without this kind of observability and understanding exactly what's going on in the network, it's fairly hard to understand whether fast verification is working as we expect or not.
Hey, Tom, can we just talk practically for a moment? Like, you know, the moment when orchestrators drop into the Discord and say, hey, what's going on? I've only been receiving test streams for the last few hours. Did something break or did something change? I assume a bunch of this work is aimed at, you know, giving them and the team like visibility into what might be happening. Without this, sort of what's the perspective when someone reports that sort of thing? Is it just observed network level, everything's healthy and fine, so don't have the ability to dive in, or is there typically something wrong or changed that leads to that scenario?
Yeah, exactly that. Like it's at the moment, it's fairly resource intensive in terms of somebody has to go from the team has to go and like understand exactly what's going on with this particular use case. And so, yeah, it's giving us the tools where it becomes like a 10-15 minute thing for us to just go and say what's going on with this orchestrator. But also my hope is like once we open this up, the community, as they do with people like orchestrators coming online today, can help each other out and begin building up more of a knowledge base of common problems and why they're happening. Because I see at the moment a lot of hypothesizing from like based on the limited information orchestrators have and people kind of guessing why stuff might be happening. But yeah, this is hopefully going to make things a lot more concrete and clear.
And like you said, it's pretty resource intensive. It, you know, takes a bunch of engineers' time to dig in and try and piece things together. So if O's are like reporting this, but they're not immediately seeing a response or an acknowledgement or, you know, immediate drop everything to troubleshoot, that's probably because at sort of the network level and the quality of service level, the team is seeing that like, oh, you know, there is a high transcoding success rate. There is a high live streaming success rate. Like everything from a network perspective is working according to plan. And so prioritizing dropping everything else to spend a few hours trying to piece together and debug a specific case may not feel like the most urgent thing in the moment. And then even though it may feel confusing or frustrating to a specific orchestrator who's observing that, and so without this observability, there's no bulletproof solution. There's no crystal clear answer of what we should do. Like keep the reports coming. They're helpful. They may be flagging that something's actually wrong, but I think it's, you know, we should prioritize getting this observability for everyone so that you know, we all can easily and efficiently like help one another and figure things out, as opposed to immediately dropping everything every time someone notices, you know, a shortage of their own personal streams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly that. Like from what I've observed, a lot of the time when orchestrators are reporting things, even if we're not seeing it at a big network level, it is pointing to some underlying problem. But yeah, like at the moment, we have no way to distinguish that versus an orchestrator setup issue. So yeah, this should hopefully help.
Yeah, and I would add that I think an area where we can improve is both in terms of acknowledging these reports as they come in and closing the loop after. Because oftentimes what will happen is we'll see a number of reports roll in, we'll go and investigate over the course of a day or two, assuming we don't see a larger problem with the network, and then we'll either address the problem or decide that there's no problem. And that sometimes doesn't get conveyed to the community. So I think that's a real opportunity for us to close the loop.
Okay, so yeah, I think that's it for me. Hunter, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, sure. So I just wanted to chat a little bit about the feature request portal, which you may have seen rolling out in a variety of channels on Discord. It's linked in a couple of places throughout our sites as well. But I wanted to provide a little context on some of the thinking behind that, and how we use it in our internal processes, and how we see it playing. So for us, this is really about streamlining the request process, trying to increase the signal to noise ratio, and promote public discussion of features. For the community, it's about creating better lines of communication, better visibility into progress, better visibility into prioritization, and moreover, better responsiveness to feature requests that are coming in. So it's really oriented around requests for new functionality, and requests for changes to behavior of existing functionality. It's less suited to urgent problems, bug reports, research discussions. Each of those have different systems. We just discussed how it works for urgent problems and some opportunities for improvement there. For research discussions, the forum might be a better place. So really the goal here is to talk about features, codecs, selection algorithm, explorers. What you'll see on here right now is a lot of it is demand side stuff, but I think there's a real opportunity to leverage it for the supply side as well. I think a couple requests have rolled in, but I think there's a nice opportunity here.
I shared my screen, by the way, Hunter, just so people could actually see it. It's at livepeer.canny.io/feature requests. Hopefully you can see it on the screen share now.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Doug. And you can also just go to livepeer.org/feature request. It'll redirect. So I guess what you can expect from us on this feature portal, you can expect consistent responses. Like we're paying attention. We might challenge a request that's put up. We might ask follow-up questions. You can expect that this will roll up into a roadmap. You're seeing the beginnings of this now. You're seeing some that are in progress, some that are planned, some that are under review. You can expect consistent updates to the feature request, to the roadmap. And so I guess the next question is, how does this relate to our prioritization? It's a direct input. The requests that are coming in here, they're critical. We try to orient our development around user or needs, customer needs, community needs. So this is really a critical input to how we think about prioritization. I would caveat that by saying that it's not the only factor. We consider difficulty, our confidence in a feature, the number of users affected, the risk to implementation. So it's not simply like what rises to the top of this portal is automatically going to be built. There's a bigger process there, but this portal and the discussions here will be a critical input. So that's a brief overview of what the portal is, but I kind of wanted to open the floor to questions, comments, any feedback you have on this portal, because really it will work if it works for you. And I can continue to promote it and push it. But I think that the best way to move forward is to just talk about it and see how you can use it in your workflows, what you'd like to see from us, and so on. So I'll pause there, and the floor is open. I'd love to hear feedback and questions here.
Are you worried at all that it might get messy over time, and you might see thousands of requests, and it could become difficult to manage it?
I would love to have that problem.
Okay, great.
I want to see more or community engagement. I want to see discussion. I want to see upvoting. And if that means that I'm trying to triage thousands of requests, it's fantastic, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Got it.
Well, cool. If no one else has any questions for now, just feel free to follow up on Discord, ping me, toss it in a public channel. Happy to talk more, and just let me know how I can be helpful here.
Cool. Thank you, Hunter. All right. So yeah, we have some space available for open discussion, Q&A. Does anyone have any topics that they'd like to spend a little time discussing?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I have a bit of a question about but this is Titan, by the way. I'm just on Jason's computer. I just have a question about the observability of the nodes that Tom is looking into. Do you have a primitive idea of what that would look like? Like, I know you were just putting, is it using something like Loki? Is it going to be just searching logs, or how much access would we get as orchestrators?
Yeah, so that's the bit we're trying to figure out at the moment. I think something more structured than Loki. I don't just to pump free-form log type data and have you guys have to try and sift through it. Ideally, I'd like some format where we can think of the types of queries we want in advance, and then just let people query on, say, orchestrator ID or stream ID.
Fair enough. A follow-up to that, is there any sensitive information that you would want to not share in that feed, or is it going to be pretty open?
Yeah, I wouldn't think there's going to be anything sensitive. Like our algorithm for selection is already in theory open, but to understand it would involve going and reading the code. And this is all going to be new data we're outputting, so we can make sure there's nothing sensitive in there. It's not like we're exposing our logs or something like that.
Fair enough. Thank you.
A lot of the orchestrator selection and marketplace dynamics have this sort of weird inefficiency right now due to the fact that Livepeer Studio is such a heavy, predominant user of the network. I think that a lot of these issues potentially become less Studio core team centric as there's more and more broadcast nodes, and then especially as those broadcast nodes experiment with their own pricing and or even customizations to the logic that they're using in node selection. Just for example, the Xenon broadcast node choosing to use the Xenon orchestrator first if there's capacity, and then only if it's over capacity, kind of spilling over to the public network. That's a different selection algorithm than what Studio uses. And as you see more and more of these pop up, then I think some of this observability into the process that Studio took to choose and fail over nodes and negotiate prices and stuff becomes a little less critical as an input to effective node operations as it is more to optimizing for all the B nodes on the network. So it brings me to a big topic we should probably save for a water cooler, but I do think I want to highlight, I think it's interesting to explore the concept of whether orchestrators want to run their own B gateway nodes under any scenarios. And I think over time, we like evolved the protocol to actually make like on-chain registration for the capability of running an ingest node, you know, an interesting extension of the protocol. But I think like before we get to that point, I think it would really be like orchestrator driven, and we'd see like what we all learn from a couple orchestrators who are interested in doing that, how they handle access to that gateway, how they handle payments to that gateway if they need to, how they want to modify their gateway selection algorithm to use their node first versus the network, and what scenarios. I think there's a lot to learn. So interesting topic to put a pin in, but I think my mind's been racing around how orchestrators could run gateway nodes beyond just Studio as well, and think about who would use those.
I have a question for Hunter. In the feature request, the page or area, is that kind of taking away, or is that replacing like the GitHub feature request idea? And like, would we be moving everything over from GitHub that are feature requests to this area, so it makes it a bit cleaner? Yeah, how do you see that going forward?
That would be my preference. Yeah, I think that we're in a little bit of a messy spot there right now. We started with a world where we have like 5 or 6 different ways that people communicate with the core team and to submit feature requests. Part of the intention here is to consolidate that, and that I sort of alluded to that with when I mentioned streamlining the process of collecting this information. So I'd like to consolidate it moving forward.
Cool. Got a good question from Zup in the chat here. What is a broadcaster gateway? Is that different than a broadcaster Livepeer Go node? Can you provide any docs on the architecture, setup, etc.? So gateway, abstract concept. It essentially means hosted broadcast nodes instead of run your own broadcast node. And there's all sorts of different reasons why you would do that. You could think of Livepeer Studio as the main gateway, and it abstracts this concept of hosting broadcast nodes all around the world in different data centers, and providing sort of the DNS load balancing, ingestion services, and everything. And you know, anyone could run a broadcast node and say that it's a gateway if they have their own motivations for doing so, opening up access, charging for it, running a business on top. That's what I mean by gateway. Really good question about the docs architecture setup. You know, Livepeer Catalyst is the sort of latest, most feature-rich incarnation of a broadcast-centric entry point to the network that combines Mist and Go Livepeer. It's certainly possible to run Go Livepeer itself independently with less features. This is how Studio is built. Hunter, Tom, maybe you want to address sort of like the level of maturity and usability for someone who wanted to take a leap and try and figure this out on their own right now. What resources would be available to support them? Is it recommended? How much heartache are they going to face? I know Xenon's gone through this themselves recently and would probably have a lot to add.
Yeah, I can jump in, or Tom, if you'd like as well. Yeah. But my overall feeling here is that the pace of development, especially over the course of the past few months, has proceeded really, really rapidly. And we've been in a place where we're trying to get to stability in terms of some of the core functionality. The API itself has shifted a bit, and this has made the prospect of maintaining documentation really challenging. I think we're starting to reach a point of greater stability where we can begin to think about an improved documentation in here. Now, I'll let Tom speak to exactly what you need to do right now. But I think the overall gist is that we want to get to a better place with documentation, and we intend to start doing that. But right now, it's going to be pretty challenging to run in an effective way, and it's certainly not like a one command kind of thing with a nice CLI the way that Go Livepeer is on the orchestrator side.
Yeah, pretty much exactly that. So if we would want to, if we wanted other people to be able to do this, if we feel like we're at a stability point where that makes sense, then I think, yeah, like being up, firstly packaging it up in some way, like some sort of single artifact that people can deploy would be a decent sized project that we'd want to take on. And then, yeah, documentation around setting it up, monitoring it, all that type of stuff would take a little time as well. So I think, like Hunter said, we are starting to stabilize in terms of the API and feature set. Yeah, I think it's going to be something we have to decide to do and prioritize. It's not just going to be like we write a few docs on the side and then that's enough to hand it over to someone.
Yeah, really good point in the chat though. Like, this group has shown incredible ability to experiment, figure things out, document, write tutorials, help one another. And so, you know, as soon as there's a good like minimum viable point of stability, being open about it, putting out there, and letting this group run with it and figure it out, I'm sure we'll see a fast pace of innovation, documentation, support, and hopefully some interesting gateway setups as well. Awesome. So there's this call has the fun ending, and one more thing, Steve Jobs style. But I thought it'd be helpful to remind this group that Livepeer network migrated to Arbitrum back in January or February of last year. One of the first projects to be there, and as a result, everyone who's been running a node on the network or has migrated their token or over to the network to stake is likely eligible for kind of an exciting moment today where Arbitrum project has kind of decentralized their governance. They've introduced a token and they're distributing it to accounts that have been participating on the Arbitrum network for the last year. And so I hope all of our node operators are aware of that. I hope they're eligible, and there's a claim process by which they can claim some ARP token today. So if you're not aware of that, check that out. And be careful not to get scammed in the process, because it's probably also the most popular scam going around in the Web3 circles these days. So find the official Arbitrum Twitter account and website, claim your ARP token, and hopefully that's a nice extra beneficial reward for running on Livepeer all these years. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining this call. I hope it was helpful. Definitely open to feedback on the format to make this useful for next quarter. And yeah, definitely anyone who's interested in this stuff, join the weekly water cooler chats with this group on Monday, where you can get into the weeds of all this this interesting stuff related to node and network operation. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Nick.